Hey, this is part 3 of our series about thinking differently as we get ready to go on a trip. There's another parable I wanted to tell you. It's a little story from Africa. One time, an African pastor was talking with a Western missionary, someone from the United States who had led a team and come there to do a project. And they were talking about their cooperation together. And the African looked at him and said, "Do you want to know what it's like to work with American teams?" And the missionary said, "Yes," expecting it to be a great honor. And the African said, "Let me tell you a story of 2 really good friends, Elephant and his best friend Mouse. Elephant and Mouse loved each other, and they talked about doing something together, and they had great plans, and they decided to make a huge party because Elephant loved to dance, and Mouse wanted to please him, and they wanted to cooperate together, so they invited all their friends, and animals came from everywhere, and they had all the arrangements made. And when the party began, it was awesome. The Elephant began to dance to the music, and there was no one who danced more and harder and longer than Elephant. He had a great time. And at the end of the party, after everyone had gone, Elephant was so excited about how it had gone, and he said, "Wasn't that a wonderful party, Mouse? Did you enjoy it?" And there was silence. Mouse, where are you? Tell me, didn't we have a good party?" And the mouse didn't answer. And the Elephant began to look around for Mouse. And as he looked around, he was horrified, because in the dust near his feet was the mouse, trampled and dead. And the African said to the missionary, "This is what doing ministry with Americans is like. We sometimes get trampled by the great American team." Doesn't that make you sad? Can you think of a time when Americans have come in with our opinions, our work, our strength, our money, our project, our plans? We came in and we are here to fix this problem. We're going to take care of it. And we come in and we do what we think is best. Instead of coming in as a servant, we come in as the boss. We come in strong. There was a youth group a student ministries team, not from our church, but years ago. I heard from a Haitian pastor's daughter, and she said she would watch teams coming every summer to come to her father's church in Haiti, and they would come with a project to do. And one particular team came, and they were so excited because the youth pastor said to her father, the pastor of the church, "We know how to build a stone wall. We have practiced, we're ready, we're here to build a stone wall. Where do you want it?" And the pastor said, "We don't really need a stone wall." And he said, "But our team is ready, we've prepared, we know how to build a stone wall. That's what we came to do. Where do you want the wall?" And he kept on, so excited. Finally, the pastor said, "It would be good to build a wall from the corner of the church to that tree over there." Immediately, the youth pastor was so excited, got his team together. They began to gather rocks. They mixed the cement, and they put it all together, and they built a beautiful little wall from the corner of the church to that tree. They were so proud. They were exhausted, and they ate the meal, and they went on their way. And as they went back home, so proud that they had built that wall. And yet, as soon as they left, her father looked at the men of the church and said, "We got to tear down the wall." And then they began the work of tearing down the wall that the student ministries team had just put up. Because they weren't there to meet a need, they were doing something to meet their need. They wanted to do a project so that they could feel better about themselves. Instead of going in to be a servant, they were going in to fulfill a need in them. So as we go, we have to be careful to serve the needs of the people. What are we really communicating? There was a time I was on a team, and as we were waiting for something, one of the people on the team said, "Look how dirty this playground is. Let's go out and let's just pick up trash." And so they took some of the youth and they went out and started picking up trash all around the playground of this school. The teachers and the students looking out the window saw them cleaning up the playground, which to the Westerners seemed like a good, helpful thing to do. But the way that the students and the teachers took it, they think our place is dirty. And so they're cleaning up. So they took it as a real, an insult that where they were was not good enough or clean enough. And so the Americans, in order to be there, had to get it clean so that they would feel comfortable. So we have to be careful. What we're doing is really serving and not making us feel better. Once in China, I was there, and one of our teachers on the team said to the teachers they were training, "And when you lead a child to Christ, you need to make sure that the first thing they do is go home and tell their parents that they made a decision to follow Jesus, and they were going to declare their faith to their parents." And the Chinese teachers were like, "We can't do that. Because if our kids who pray to receive Christ go back to their homes and tell their atheist parents, they could be in trouble. You don't understand what you're asking. You're going to get us in trouble." Because they had a whole different way of dealing with it. They knew the culture. But sometimes we think we're so right, and we are going to declare what's right, and we make a big mistake. Sometimes you see a dignitary, a high official from the government will visit another country, and you watch what happens. And when the president or the vice president comes to another country, the first thing that happens behind the scenes is our own security people go in advance, and we relieve all of the other security officers in the country, and we take over, because what we're saying is your security is not good enough. We have to take care of things. So we go in sometimes and we are the ones saying, "We are the elephant and you are just the mouse, and we're going to do what we think is best. Here's what we need." And so even as teams, we have to be careful not to go in and say, "Here's what we need. These living arrangements are not good enough." I remember once I was in Moldova and they only had one bed for 3 people. There were 3 of us. And 2 of us were willing to sleep in the bed. The one person said, "I refuse. I am not going to sleep in a bed with another person." And the family didn't know what to do. So he slept on the floor. And the family was so hurt because they had not provided what was needed. Because the elephant came in and said, "This is what I need." And the mouse didn't know how to provide it. So what we communicate is not always the best. Sometimes we walk into a place and we immediately say, "Do you know what needs to be done here? You know how we can fix this? I'll tell you what." And we want to take over and run the project. We want to take over and show them how to do what's best for their culture. And we've only been there a day or 2. We have to be careful. We have to go in and be servants. Jesus said that we need to learn how to become servants. We're not there to meet our needs. We're there to meet the needs of others. Jesus said, if you want to be great in the kingdom of God, you've got to learn to be the servant of all. What do you need? How can we help? What's the best way for us to encourage you? We want to help. Jesus said we have to learn to be a slave. He used a pretty heavy word there, not just being a servant, but how to be a slave, taking that attitude. I'm here to help you. I just want to do what's needed. You tell us what you need and we'll do it. We'll do our best to serve you, taking that position of the lowest, being the slave. Jesus himself said, "I didn't come here to serve, to be served. I came here to be the servant of all." He came to lay down his life for us, and that's what he said we ought to do. One of the things to remember as you go in as a servant is people are always watching you. You're always on stage. That elephant is obvious and everybody sees you. You are always on stage and being watched. And so here are a couple things to remember as you go in and how you can be that servant, how you can go in with the right attitude. People are watching the way that you care for others on your team, the way that you speak to one another, the way that you look out for one another. Jesus said, you'll know, the world will know you're my disciples by the way you love one another. So be aware that as people watch you, they need to see you caring for your own team, how respectful you are to the leaders on your team, how loving and caring you are for one another on the team. Don't act like you don't care and push each other around and talk disrespectful and have an attitude with one another. Be gracious. People are watching the way you handle difficulties or disappointment. When the bus isn't there, the activity gets canceled, the rain changes the plans, and the disappointment, you were hoping to have this for the meal and really you're having the same thing you've had the last 3 nights. They're watching your face and your actions. They're watching to see how you handle difficulties. They live with difficulties, and we're supposed to be an example for them. So they're watching. How do you handle that? That's okay. We'll be fine. We're willing to wait. Well, we'd love to do that. Is that your attitude? Or is it, dang, oh man, I didn't want to do that. People are watching. Are you acting like the elephant? There's an interesting story in a movie. It's actually from a book called Out of Africa. This woman, she's a Christian woman, but she's really not living like a Christian man. She has a servant, and the servant is actually a Muslim man, African man from Muslim background, and he's her housekeeper, and he serves with her in the house for, I don't know, a year or two, and then he ends up leaving and going to work for someone else. He actually goes to a really devout Muslim man, and he's working in his home, and the man who was raised Muslim, but his faith wasn't very strong. He saw the Muslim man in his life, and he committed his life to Islam, and he wanted to be a very devout Muslim like this guy he was working with. And he went back and visited the American woman, and he said, now I am a true Muslim. I saw this man, I watched the way he lived, and I wanted to be like him. And she said, why didn't you want to be a Christian? Why didn't you ask me? I would have told you about my faith. And he said, I watched how you lived for the years that I served with you, and I didn't see any evidence of your faith. And I watched this Muslim man, and his whole life was around his faith. And that's the faith I chose. And she said, I wish you would have told me you were watching my life. I would have lived differently. We don't often get a second chance. People are watching us, and we need to live in a way that brings honor and glory to God. Be a servant. Be humble. Let's not go in as the elephant who needs his way. Let's go in as a servant, and let's be a blessing, okay?